What I've noticed throughout the years is there is a lot of love and zeal and desire to study the Quran and to pursue the Quran. But see, the problem is, if you don't have direction in life and you have no idea where you're going in life, then you might put so many hours into something, but you may not get to your objective. So today, inshallah, in this brief khatira, I want to share with you that what is the road map? What is the road map for a person who wants to understand the Quran? See, we don't know, should we go for tafsir? Should we do this? Should I study Arabic? Should I do word for word translation of the Quran? Should I just pick up an English tafsir? What do I need to do in order to continue my journey with the Quran? And there's a lot of misunderstanding. So today, inshallah, I want to share with you that what is a proper roadmap for our understanding of the Quran. And by the way, I will say this, that there is no hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that clearly highlights that. This is purely a subjective matter, but this is based on, I memorized Quran when I was at a very young age. I started at the age of 8, I finished at the age of 11, and there was no Quran programs here in the United States, so I had to travel overseas to do this. But over the years, then I kept on reading Quran, reciting the Quran, and then later on I went to go study Sharia and Deen and Usul and so forth. So this is just basically my understanding, and over the years of working with the community, that what journey and what are the proper steps to take that journey. So we'll begin with step number 1 when it comes to the Quran. Before we do anything, before we pick up a tafsir book, before we do anything, the very first thing that must be done when it comes to the Quran is we must learn how to read the Quran with Tajweed. Simple as that. That is the very first step. Any person who says, I'm going to bypass this step and I'm going to go to tafsir and I'm going to go this and that and Arabic and so forth, then this is not the right way to start the Quran. Because what we find in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ is that there was so much of an emphasis on reading the Quran. Even nowadays, when there are many people who say, okay, in Ramadan, pick up a tafsir, do this, do that, but gain access to the Quran, the reality is that if you study history in general, the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, the Tabi' Tabi'een, in the month of Ramadan, there was no tafsir. There was nothing else but qira'atul Quran. Simple as that. As you have heard before many times, there used to be no lectures, there was nothing. This entire month of Ramadan was dedicated to qira'atul Quran, to reading the Quran, because there is no other month that's going to push you as hard to read the Quran. So this is why the very first step when it comes to the journey of the Quran is that a person must learn how to read the Quran with the correct pronunciation. And we find this in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Ali radiallahu anh, he explains and he does the tafsir of this ayah, and he says that وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآن means تَجْوِيدُ الْحُرُوفِ وَمَعْرِفَةُ الْوُقُوفِ is to pronounce the letters correctly with their correct makharij, and ma'rifat al-wuquf is to know how to stop and where to stop and how to continue in the Quran. Once a person has done that, then part of step number 1 is that they should try to read as much as Quran as they can to gain fluency. So this is also a very important part. Often what I see people doing is there is no emphasis on tajweed. So however they've been reading the Quran all their life, they just continue with that, and then there is no emphasis on fluency and picking up fluency. So this is why I would say the very first step is learning how to read the Quran with tajweed and making sure that you gain some fluency in reading. And by the way, here alhamdulillah at Epic, there are many programs, especially for the sisters. For the sisters, there are plenty of programs during the week to learn how to read the Quran and memorize the Quran. And for the brothers, we usually have it between Maghrib and Isha. I'm the one who usually teaches that class. We have people who come, some people are just reading the Quran with tajweed, some are learning how to read the Quran with tajweed, some are memorizing and so forth, and this is a very flexible class. So anyone who wants to learn how to read the Quran with proper tajweed, and this is you come in, you say your lesson, and you can leave also. It's a very flexible class in terms of its schedule. So inshallah we have this, and we're going to continue this after Ramadan, inshallah, is between Maghrib and Isha usually. The next step, after a person has gained fluency and read the Quran, now comes the desire that, okay, I'm reading all this, but what does it mean? That is when the first step you must take is, you must pick up a very basic translation of the Quran. And there are many translations of the Quran. And though many of the Quran translations that we see they have the old classical English, thou art, and these kind of words, though thy art, and they use these kind of words. That is why you have to find a translation of the Quran that is considered as contemporary English. Many of you have seen when Al-Furqan came here, they were handing out and distributing those Qur'ans called the Clear Qur'an. You saw that? It's a black, it has like a black and gold cover. That is a really good translation. Another good translation is Mas Abdul Halim. You can find it from Oxford. It's a really good translation of the Qur'an. It's very simple, to the point. It helps you understand it. And there are some others that are not coming to my mind right now, but there are some good contemporary English Qur'ans that translate the Qur'an. That, in my recommendation, after you have learned how to read, you should go for that first and get just a basic glimpse of what the Quran is. But then after that, a person says that, okay, now that I have a basic understanding, I still have a lot of questions regarding the Quran. I still want to go deeper into the Quran. I want to stand behind the Imam, and when the Imam is reciting, I want to understand the Quran. Now here's where the issue takes place. Some people, they say, I'm going to go and start learning the Arabic language. And here's a problem with that. There's nothing wrong in learning the Arabic language. But when you start learning the Arabic language and you start going into grammar, and you start going to the rules of grammar, sarf and nahwa and so forth, what is considered as a ism, what is considered as a fi'l, what is considered as a harf, and then you have fi'l al-madi, fi'l al-mudari, and then fi'l al-amr, and nahi, and ism fa'il, and maf'ul, and dharf, and ala, and so forth. You have all these different classifications and so forth that are taking place, and the properties of the ism and so forth. It becomes very confusing for the person who wants to gain a basic understanding of the Quran. So what they do is that they start going into all these different courses. After a while, they take a step back because they're not gaining what they want. At that particular time, my recommendation would be is, after you've read a basic translation of the Quran, go for a word-for-word translation of the Quran. A word-for-word translation of the Quran. Let me tell you why. Majority of the words of the Quran, they repeat itself. There's one juz, I will tell you, which is very unique in terms of all the other juz, and that is juz amma, by the way. There are a lot of vocabulary that you will find in juz amma, you will not find it in many other places in the Quran. You understand? It's, even as a student of knowledge, when I was studying, the juz that was the most difficult. In fact, many of my teachers, whenever they would test their students in terms of Quran translation, they would go to Juz' Amma, because Juz' Amma translation is the most difficult, by the way. You would think that is the most easiest because it's Juz' Amma, but the vocabulary that's used in Juz' Amma is very difficult. Then you go to the entire Quran and you will see a lot of repetition. Inna alladhina. What does inna mean? Indeed. Alladhina, those. Amanu, those who have iman. Wa amilu salihat, they do righteous deeds. You'll find these words repeating themselves over and over again. So when you go for a word-for-word translation of the Quran, and you come across those same words over and over again, then when the Imam is reciting, or you hear a dua and so forth, now slowly and gradually you're able to connect the letters, and you're able to connect the words. So that is why I would say that part of step number 2 is translation, a basic translation. Then after that, you can go for a word-for-word translation. Then, still a person who reads word-for-word translation, they still want to go deeper into the Quran then. And by the way, one rule of thumb is, when it comes to the Arabic language in the Quran, you cannot just study something for the sake of studying something. It has to drive you to learn something. So as I said, when you study Arabic but you don't know how to apply it, that's why they lose interest in Arabic. Although the Arabic language is a very beautiful language and it's a very deep language. So that is why you have to take it step by step. Step number 3 is, try to go for a basic explanation of the Quran. A very, very basic explanation of the Quran. Now, I will tell you this. In the English language, you won't find many. A long time ago, there was an abridged version of Tafsir ibn Kathir in English. Later on, they actually took the original Tafsir ibn Kathir and they created a replica of it in English, meaning that it has all the footnotes and all the other notes that is found in the Arabic tafsir Ibn Kathir, and they translate in English. Yet, based on my observation and what I went and I was trying to, compare and contrast side by side, there are still missing some information. There is no doubt in the fact that when it comes to all the access, all the work that has been done in terms of Quran and the work of the Quran and tafsir and so forth is all in Arabic. Majority of it, the major majority is still in Arabic that has not been translated in English. However, nowadays they're trying to push forward and they're trying to provide tafsir for many of these for the Quran in the English language. You can go for tafsir Ibn Kathir. Don't go for the abridged version. Try to go for the full version. There is tafsir al-Sa'di. You can go with that. There is Ma'arif al-Quran, a great scholar in Pakistan today, Mufti Taqi Uthmani Sahib. His father, Mufti Shafir, wrote a very beautiful tafsir called Ma'arif al-Quran. It was first written in Urdu, then it was translated in English. So there are good tafsirs that you can actually go to, and these were tafsirs written for the general public. So you can go for those kind of tafsirs and it'll give you a basic understanding of the Quran. But I would say with a simple explanation. After that, you can go for a deeper explanation. The next step after that is that a lot of times a person now is reading the Quran, they've already read the translation, they've gone through word for word. Now they've gone through the explanation and they've gone deeper into the Quran. But still there's a lot of questions. And that is where you can then start learning the Arabic language to gain access to, first of all, the Quran and better understand the Quran. But if you're already done word for word translation, you already have a good understanding of the Quran. You then can learn the Arabic language to gain access to the other books. To gain access to the original Arabic copies. And this is where you see, and inshallah I'll finish on this very quickly, every single tafsir, by the way, written. A lot of times people say, what's the difference between this tafsir and that tafsir? And that tafsir and this tafsir? What's the difference between all these different tafsir that are written? And you find them in the Islamic libraries. The answer to that question is that every single tafsir has its own objective. Every single tafsir has its own objective. Tafsir Ibn Kathir was written by Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayh, and if you open up the original, you pick up the Arabic copy, you'll find that he provides the ayah of the Quran, and then he'll provide ahadith. His focus was ahadith related to that ayah of the Quran. Then you find another tafsir such as Kashaf, written by Imam Zamakhshari rahmatullahi alayh. Imam Zamakhshari rahmatullahi alayh has some issues in his aqidah, but if you open up his tafsir is purely linguistic. It's all linguistic. That why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's purely from a sarf and nahwa perspective, a grammatical perspective, and he's explaining in his tafsir that grammatically why did Allah use this word, or why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring this format instead of that format. You'll find Imam Zamakhshari. Another tafsir that many people have come across is Tafsir al-Baydawi. Tafsir al-Baydawi is an abridged tafsir of Tafsir al-Kashaf. Then you have another tafsir called Tafsir al-Jalalain. Is written by two scholars whose name were Jalaluddin Mahalli was a Shafi'i scholar, and he wrote the tafsir of the Quran. And Tafsir Jalalain is a very different tafsir. I studied Tafsir Jalalain, a very different tafsir compared to all the other tafsir. In Tafsir Jalalain, they bring a one word of the Quran and they might bring one or two words to explain that word, and they keep on breaking it down word for word. So Tafsir Jalaluddin Mahalli was a great scholar in the past. He wrote the tafsir from Surah Al-Kahf all the way to the end, and then Surah Al-Fatiha. And he finished Surah Al-Fatiha and he passed away. Later on, another scholar by the name of Jalaluddin Suyuti rahmatullahi alayhi came, and he continued and he finished the tafsir from Surah Al-Baqarah all the way to Surah Al-Kahf. So all these tafsir, the point is, each one of them, they have something unique to offer. You see Al-Qurtubi, Jami' al-Ahkam al-Quran. It's all about ahkam. You pick it up. One mas'alatul ula, mas'alatul thaniya, mas'alatul thalith, and so forth. You read his tafsir. It's an eye-opening tafsir. Ruhul Ma'ani, another eye-opening tafsir. But once again, all these tafsir are in what language? They're only in the Arabic language. You understand? So if you really want to go deeper into these surahs and into these tafsir, you have to learn the Arabic language. Then after that, you can go to the next step, which is then people will start wanting to learn other things regarding the Quran. Like when I share with you the surah summaries, this is already a work that's already been done. There's a great scholar of the past. He actually took every single surah and he wrote down what is the connection between all the surahs, what are the themes of each surah, and so forth. When you talk about why did Allah use this word instead of that word and so forth, there's a word done for that also. And for those of you who know how to read and write Urdu, there's actually a word, there's a book that I can recommend. It's called Mutaradifatul Quran. It's written by a person named Abdurrahman Kilani. So he wrote actually in this book, it's all in Urdu, but he actually wrote that in each place, like when Allah talks about the word friend, friendship, there are almost 10 different words in the Quran for the word friendship. What's the difference between each of those words? This author, he has put it in this. And there are so many other Arabic works in this matter. So the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of times when we talk about Quran, and we want to start that journey of the Quran, many times we're trying to jump around in different places. And when you try to jump around and you don't have a clear path and you don't have a direction, then you're going to be spending a lot of time and you may not achieve anything. So that is why, of course you will achieve something, but you might not achieve your full objective. So that is why, take it step by step. Read the Quran, Tajweed, fluency. That's the first step. Then the second step is translation, a basic translation, word for word translation. Step number 3, basic explanation, and then a little more detailed explanation. The fourth step then you can take is going and studying the Arabic language and going deeper. And by the way, inshallah, even after Ramadan, we're planning to start some classes here at Epic for Arabic grammar and so forth. It's a long journey, but you can, inshallah, take the classes. You're gonna hear about it, inshallah, soon after Ramadan, but we're gonna start those classes. But then that is when you can study the Arabic language. And once you have a good grip on the Arabic language, then you can start going into these books. Finally, I will say this. The last thing I will say, I promise on this. I'll finish on this, inshallah. In this whole journey of the Quran, do not go about your journey alone. Have some kind of supervision. Have some kind of scholarship supervision in place. Have some shaykh, some scholar, some person who has a good understanding of the Quran, who has studied tafsir and so forth, go back to them and get their opinion, get their suggestion, and work with them. Let them suggest to you. You know how many times people come to me and say, Shaykh, give me a book to read. What book am I going to give you to read? You understand? Then I have to usually ask them, what is your preference? What is your passion? Is tafsir your passion? Is sirah your passion? Is aqidah your passion? What is your passion? And then you have to chase that passion and read the books according to your passion, inshallah. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that as we finish Ramadan, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may He keep us on the path of the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us connected with the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us associated with the Quran. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise us on the day of judgment amongst the people of the Quran. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Wa jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما.